Hey, welcome to part 3 of our discussion on inflation. The end of part 2, we discussed what was meant by the CPI. Now we're going to go through an example. So we've got a basket. Our basket consists of 4 pizzas and 10 lattes. What I'd like you to do is start off on your own. I want you to pause this, figure out what is the cost of the basket for the 3 years, and then using 2010 as the base year, what is the CPI level for all 3 years? So, the two things, what is the cost of the basket for all 3 years? And what is the CPI level for all 3 years? Go ahead and pause it now. Take a few minutes, it might take 5 minutes or so, but I think you'll appreciate attempting this before we just go through it. I think it'll help you learn it a lot better. Okay, I hope you paused, went through, attempted the problem. So what's the cost of the basket? Well, 2010, 4 pizzas at $10, $40, 10 lattes at $2, $20, $60. 2011, pizzas 11 times 4, $44, 10 times 250, $25, $69 for the cost in 2011. 2012, 4 pizzas times $12, $48, 10 lattes times 3, that'll be another $30, so we're looking at $78 for the basket. So that was the first task you were asked to do, is to compute the cost of the basket. The second is to figure out what is the CPI level for each of these 3 years, using 2010 as the base year. So using 2010 as the base year, right, we need to remember what the equation was to calculate the CPI. So it's the cost of the basket in the current year divided by the cost of the basket in the base year times 100. Well, in the base year, that is the current year, so you end up with 60 divided by 60 for 1 multiplied by 100, and that's why we said the base year, the CPI level is always 100. So the base year CPI level is 100. What about in 2011? It will not be 100 in 2011, right? The cost of the basket in the current period, if we're in 2011, is $69. The cost in the base period was 60. So now you're going to have $69 divided by $60 times 100, and that works out to 115 would be our CPI level for 2011. 2012, we have 78 as the cost of the basket in the current period, divided by the price level in the base period, which is 60. So 130 is the CPI in 2012. Notice CPI is increasing. That does indicate we're seeing inflation and not deflation. Let's go ahead and calculate this now. So before we do this together once again, why don't you pause it for a couple minutes, go back to the equation we learned on how to calculate the inflation rate, and try to calculate the inflation rate between 2010 and 2011 and between 2011 and 2012. So go ahead and take a moment and do that now. Okay, so let's work through these together. To calculate the inflation rate, you take the CPI in the current period minus the CPI in the previous period, divided by the CPI in the previous period, multiply by 100%. So 115 minus 100 divided by 100. 15.15 times 100%, we're dealing with a 15% inflation rate. The second one, it goes up by 15 as well. However, it will be lower than 15% because we're going from 115 to 130. So it's 130 minus 115 divided by 115. So now the inflation rate is 15 divided by 115, or 13% once you multiply that by 100%. Okay, we've got a different example here, calculating the CPI with a basket on beef and chicken, where the basket's 10 pounds of beef and 20 pounds of chicken. You could see that we've already calculated that the basket costs $120 in the base year. Right? 4 times 10 is 4 times 10 is 40, 4 times 20 is 80, 40 plus 80 gives us the 120. What is the CPI in 2011? And what's the inflation rate from 2011 to 2012? So again, I'd like you to pause this and try to work on these two questions right now. Okay, I hope you've worked on these two questions. CPI in 2011. So we take the cost of the basket in 2011, which would be 5 times 10 for 50 plus 5 times 20 for 100. $150 cost of the CPI basket. Then we have to divide it by the cost of the basket in the base period, which we found to be 120. Multiply that by 100 and it gives us a CPI level of 125. So that's part A. The CPI level in 2011 is 125. The next question, what was the inflation rate from 2011 to 2012? Well, this really is a two-part question. You have to do a couple different things. You just found the CPI level for 2011. You need to find it for 2012 too before you can begin. So you take the price of the beef times the quantity of beef sold, $9 times 10. Cost of the chicken times the quantity of chicken sold, 6 times 20, gives you a cost of the CPI basket of 210. CPI in 2012 then is 175, right? Cost of the basket in the current period is 210, divided by the cost of the basket in the base year of 120, gives you a CPI level of 175. But that's not what they've asked for. They asked for the inflation rate between 2011 to 2012. So you need to take the CPI level in 2012, subtract the CPI level you've already computed for 2011, which is 125, divide it by the CPI level for 2011, 125. You get 50 divided by 125, or 40%. That is the inflation rate between 2011 and 2012. I would not want to be living in that economy, as that is a brutally high inflation rate. So obviously a simplistic example, right? It's only covering 2 items, but if this were everything, 40% inflation rate between 2011 and 2012.